So you had to find opportunities within that structure to pepper it with your own little bits of creativity.
Welcome to the Creative and Code podcast.
Welcome to the internet, my friend.
Brought to you by ID Digital Agency.
Kind of a big deal.
Dive into the dynamic world of digital marketing, creative design, and coding with top experts, latest trends, and actionable insights. Let's get inspired and innovate together.
It's showtime.
Welcome to another Creative and Code.
Welcome.
My name is Jay.
And my name is Emily.
And we're on our 17th episode, I think it is, Emily. Is that right?
I don't know. I'm not keeping track.
We've just had Andy from Two Tractors come in, and this will be starting in a couple of minutes. We've decided to shorten down our little chin wags before the guest interview,
I think Andy had so much insight and so much interesting stuff to say. I don't think anyone wants to hear us waffle on. I think they want to hear Andy talk.
Yeah.
Because it's good stuff.
You have to listen. It's all about his, film agency and video agency of what he does and some of the amazing clients he's got, and also his history into some of the roles that got him to meet his co-founder.
And insights as an agency owner, I feel like is always interesting, especially from kind of your perspective in owning an agency. But yeah, certainly I think an agency like that where there's different people in it. Obviously they're like a creative agency, so they have directors and animators and this very different kind of, what is the word I'm looking for? Like
approach angle?
Approach angle of in the creative industry to something compared to like what we do. Just very insightful.
Yeah. I'm looking forward to working with him one day again. We got to work with his co-founder for a couple of weeks. It seemed like they've got a really good business going on. So listen into that. Very short. We've got only 2 or 3 weeks left. No, maybe a month. I'm extenuating. But actually
we've got a month today. Yeah.
Until we finish up on the 20th of December.
Yeah.
For 2.5 weeks or so. How
are you feeling? Are you feeling like things are going to get done before the end of the year? I feel like a lot of things are stalling a little bit, and
it's not us stalling. It's just
I just mean that
I
don't know what's kind of like just the vibes are kind of like people kind of just want to push things to next year. I get the sense like they just kind of don't want to get things done before the end of the year.
It's been such a busy year.
Yeah, well,
things have been bang, bang, bang all year that everyone's just like,
exactly.
Looking forward to some time off.
Yeah.
We've got like 6 big projects that we're trying to get done by the end of the year. Looks like I reckon 80% of them will happen. We found out today too, one of the clients that wants to go live at the start of the year next year, which
takes the pressure off.
Which is a good thing. Yeah. It's really important that we deliver the quality and the value, and where if clients are happy to, we can shuffle things around. So looking forward to getting things done by the end of the year. You're off soon in 3 weeks or so.
Not even. 12
scary.
days.
Crap. There might be some podcasts that you may not be a part of. But we have another one coming up next week with Adam from Peninsula Hot Springs. He's one of the digital marketing managers there, and we'll be hearing more about how Peninsula Hot Springs does their marketing. And also he used to run a podcast which had Malcolm Turnbull on it, an ex-politician from Australia. Kevin Rudd has been on his podcast.
Okay.
And it is a book club style podcast. You read a book a week and then they review it together. And all these politicians apparently read books.
Sure.
Who has the time?
I don't think I would want to know what kind of books like Malcolm Turnbull's reading. What is that? Anyway, it's an interesting. I like the concept though. Yeah. Well, there we go. Maybe he can give us some podcast expertise.
So if you haven't already, start following or subscribe to our podcast would be great. But let's get on with our guest.
You have my curiosity. Now you have my attention.
Welcome, Andy.
Thank you.
To the podcast. So you're the co-founder of Two Tractors.
Yes.
Creative agency based here in Melbourne.
Yep.
And your history is more in being a creative director of larger agencies, right?
Somewhat, yeah.
From what I was reading on the
yeah.
internet. I'm curious kind of how you got into this career to begin with and then how you've kind of ended up as running your own agency.
Long journey. Thanks for having me, by the way.
That's okay.
Look, it goes back to mid-90s, so I'm giving my age away there. So I just clicked over into the 50s.
Don't look at you. I'm guessing you're probably 10 years older than me based on that. I graduated school in 2000.
Yeah, that's about right.
Keep the ages away.
Yeah, that's good. That's good. The only thing I was really much chop at school was writing. And I thought, I don't know how to make a career out of that. And at the time, Steve Vizard was doing skits on Fast Forward.
Full Frontal.
Set in advertising land. And it was my mother who said, yeah, maybe advertising could be good. So I didn't know anything about it. But
clicked.
I did. But I went to RMIT, studied advertising, and then got a job at a small Australian agency called Buchanan Group. They had, I think 6 months prior to me joining, launched a concept called brand power on TV.
No way.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
I can remember the jingle at the start.
Right?
Too.
Yeah. And so brand power had been around actually for quite a few years as a print concept, but they'd just gone on air on TV with Sally Williams, who would remain with that brand and was literally, that was a brand that was on 300 tarps a week, every week of the year. I
remember it. Dun, 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 dun.
That's it. It was literally the most visible brand in the country.
That's wild.
So when I started mid-90s, it was Australia only. And then gradually over the ensuing 15 years, by the time I left, we were on air in 43 different countries.
Whoa.
So, because it was kind of like McDonald's, right? It was a very simple process that you could replicate anywhere in the world. And so my job sort of changed over that period from being a copywriter to becoming creative director, and then working with my now co-founder, Rick Hargraves, on taking that concept global with obviously the backing and help of the broader team globally, which was a great journey and learned a hell of a lot. It was a great business to work for. It taught me a lot about building a culture and contributing to a culture. Do you know what I mean? And actually...
the people.
And showing up every day and holding yourself to account in terms of the way you are around others within an organisation. And also there was great opportunity there. So the opportunity to travel, to direct. I'd never direct TV ads. I'd never done directing. I hadn't gone to film school or anything. But again, you're talking about a formularised process, right? So there were some safety nets there, let's say. So I left there in 2011, went and had a brief stint at a mob called Wellcom. And then, Rick and I...
Is that where you met, was it? Or?
No, we met at Buchanan Group.
Right.
He was head of sales and I was head of creative. And actually for years we worked together but not particularly closely. We became really great mates. But... we weren't necessarily working that closely, and it was only once the global expansion really kicked off that we spent a lot more time working together. And we would come into work and start at 6 a.m. so that we could be online for Toronto. And then as the centralised function of Buchanan Group gradually dissipated and became less relevant, so too did we, perhaps. So we'd talk about maybe one day starting our own business.
Like an opportunity out of where you were, and you're like, you do sales, you do creative, let's get
literally
together.
And it wasn't. We each went and did other things for a couple of years, and it took us, going and seeing some other things first to determine, hey, actually we've got this complementary skill set, and there's also a gap in the market that I think a business that opportunity that skill set could address, and we're able to launch 2 tractors on the back of it. So
it's amazing. I love it.
And then 2 tractors, is that the 2 of you on tractors, or what?
I don't know.
It's just a name, out of a hat? Or?
It's kind of out of a hat. So our 6 a.m. Sessions sitting in the old Buchanan Group office, we used to refer to it just by our initials, and Rick's going to kill me when I say this, but it was the working title was G&H Group. I don't care what he says. It was never H&G Group. My initial was always first, and that's on the record now. So sorry, Rick. But when we finally met in a pub on the July school holidays in 11? No. 2013, and hashed out a plan on a napkin with a borrowed pen, Rick leant over to me really, the conversation had been really sort of fast and great. It was really, everything was positive. And then it just suddenly went down in energy. He said, listen, I don't know how to say this, but we can't be G&H Group. There's no way we can be G&H Group. It's the worst name ever, particularly with my initial first. So yeah, we just very quickly came to 2 tractors. And it wasn't, Rick had, in the time that we'd worked together, he'd actually lived on a farm up in Kyneton, and he was always buying farm stuff. And interestingly, when we first started and we had no clients, part of our sales strategy early on was to get in touch with agricultural businesses, because we thought, they might really respond to this name. So we found ourselves having meetings in the middle of nowhere in like disused school portables that had been turned into offices on gravel parking lots, and just thinking, oh man, we used to fly to Switzerland and go and meet in the head offices of Nestle, and here we are halfway out to Corowa meeting with someone who makes a plough attachment for a tractor. But anyway, we got over those early stages.
And just going back as well, the kind of work that you were doing back at Buchanan Group. Buchanan. And then you were at Wellcom as well.
Yep.
How does that work differ to the work you're doing now? Like, they are different businesses and different structures, probably as well, different budgets and things, I'm guessing.
Yeah.
There's good and bad for both of those things.
Definitely. And look, as a creative at Buchanan Group, their business model was incredible. It really was. From a creative perspective, it's highly formulaic, right? You're talking about a branded 30-second infomercial, more or less. So you had to find opportunities within that structure to pepper it with your own little bits of creativity.
And was it just brand power that you were on? Or
so we had that. Brand power kind of spawned a bunch of branded advertising concepts. So we had Zoot Review, we had Medifacts. So Zoot was unscripted. So it was constantly, how could we expand the footprint? And then, once competition launched, that really changed the landscape there. But to go back to your question, it was, the budgets were really tight on those TVCs. And so the really great learning from that for me was, you can break the rules from a production perspective and produce to a decent quality without spending huge bucks on production.
And I guess because of the consistency of that power brand ad, people knew what to expect. There was going to be an intro, an outro, with flogging a health product of some
100%.
sort.
Yeah. And so then going into Wellcom, that was a far more design-focused business, which I loved. Because when I'd started, my first art director partner, Tracy Eastwood, she was obsessed with typography, and that really just created for me this ongoing obsession with typography, which drives my team nuts and always has. I'm constantly banging on about kerning and leading, but I love it. And so there are all these things that you pick up along the way, and yes, our budgets are different now, but to be honest, it was, when we started, the thing that stood us in really good stead was that we could do things really cost effectively. And we literally had Rick, who was head of sales, also head of production, also the runner on set. I was partly involved in sales. I was the copywriter. I was the director on set. And so we could just bring in all of these other people that we'd worked with for years, who we'd actually worked with on infomercials, but now we're making ads for, at the time, this is back in 2013, toy companies and the like. And so we just, once we started pitching and getting a little bit of, getting some runs on the board, then it just grew from there. And so as you move into bigger budgets through the course of the business, for us, we didn't have to learn how to do small. We actually had to learn how to do big. So it was kind of the opposite shift that a lot of businesses have to make, and that was because of the experiences we'd had at Buchanan Group, and certainly for me at Wellcom.
I see too that there's been a shift. You got the infomercials, and that people were doing ads a bit differently even 10 years ago. These days, every business is doing video content.
Yeah.
And if it's themselves or if it's through someone like yourselves, it always comes back to that storytelling. The things that work that I see is just hearing people's stories and having it resonate with someone is the biggest thing that you can get. Do you find that as well with the creative that you come up with from a scripting, storyboarding kind of view?
Yeah, 100%. And I think what's, it's so good to move out of infomercial space and go, okay, let's actually get into some really interesting storytelling. And an interesting part of the development of Two Tractors was that we very early on got pulled into the corporate world. We started working with City Power Power Corp, big electricity distributor here in Victoria. We certainly didn't launch our business thinking that was going to be a target for us. But we saw a really great opportunity where you could apply the campaign building and storytelling fundamentals that you apply in the creative ad world to corporate-based content or B2B content, and there was a really great appetite for that we saw in market. So yeah, you're absolutely right. Applying storytelling that can hook people in, and particularly now as well, that keeps them hooked. That's the challenge we all face as storytellers, right? Because they can swipe past it. So what are those things that you do to just keep someone to, every time they're about to swipe, to capture their attention again? Yeah.
And with the creative these days too, it is that kind of rapid. You need to be engaged right from the start. You have to have that hook. You have to have the message. You got to have something that converts and memorable. And are you finding that there is a particular method you were talking about? There was a really good method back in the previous agency you worked for. Is there a method to Two Tractors and how you kind of produce, write and shoot content?
Not necessarily, and I think, because we're nothing like doing infomercial sort of stuff, and I think what we're seeing as an evolution, let's say, if you think about things like emerging story arcs and the like, and how you kind of flip a narrative on its head, because in the old days you'd be watching TV, it's linear TV. Yes, you might get up and put the kettle on, as they used to say, during an ad break, but you had 30 seconds to build to something. You had 30 seconds to build to the punchline. These days, you're sort of working on the basis that I've probably got this audience member for 5 seconds, so I need to get to my so what moment really quick, and then just add value along the way. So there's those sorts of things that you are trying to apply. But in answer to the question, do we have a kind of a lockdown approach? No, I think...
So you're flexible and...
You have to be. Yeah, you have to be. I mean, it depends on, if I look at, we can do animation, we can do live action, we can do... Our toolkit, if you like, is not limited, and our solutions aren't limited by what our toolkit is. So therefore, we're just looking at, okay, what is the problem to be solved here, be it on a B2C level or a B2B component, whatever that may be, how can we best address that within the pretty broad skill set that we have?
Do you find a lot of the briefs that come through are kind of your traditional approach to, this is the product, this is what we're selling, and then you try and just make it that much more engaging, or completely flip it around and have something that they didn't even think of? And I've noticed the same long ads that you've done, and they seem to be coming out more and more frequently, that they must be happy with what you're doing. There's the story and they might be getting the sales. Is that what you see, that the clients are coming back as well because of those ideas that you're coming up with that aren't traditional?
I think so. I mean, it's funny, Rick and I talk about this all the time, that the success of our business is really built on reputation, and it's really based on, we've got a core belief that we want our clients to love the experience as much as the outcome. Yeah. Now, that's not unique by any stretch, right? To talk about a positive customer service, but for us, we do it for a few reasons. One, I actually think it delivers a better result. So if you can create an environment where the relationship is so open and so positive that you get a real flow of information between one another, and there's a trust there, then that ultimately delivers a better outcome in terms of creative and storytelling. But also, I don't want to get to the end of a project and the client say, you know what, I'm really happy with this, but man, it was like crawling over broken glass to get there. So for us, we've found those clients that keep coming back, it's because they like the experience and the outcome. And they're the ones then that leave a business and 18 months later pop up somewhere else and get in touch with us. Or we get a phone call from someone who says, hey, my friend or my colleague at this business worked with you guys and suggested we get in touch.
It's so important. I 100% agree with you. One of our biggest clients came to us because one of the girls that was working at a printing company that we were working for, that we just happened to say hello to one day, and said, here's our card if you need anything. This is way back when business cards were a thing. But she remembered, she had it on her desk, and she went and worked for this big company, and she's like, oh, I know someone that does really good things.
Yeah.
And that was it.
It's amazing. And also, if you think about our industry, the thing where I think it's free to do this is that there are so many people in this space that hate working with their agency. Right? And there's great agencies. I'm not suggesting otherwise, right? But there are people for whom that relationship is really combative and really fractious. So to me, it's really easy to say, hey, let's just be good to deal with. And that to me it's great business. And like I say, I reckon it delivers a better outcome in terms of creative and storytelling.
We find, it's amazing how similar we are, because I reckon in the last 3 or 4 years too, a lot of the good work that we've gained is because people have had bad experiences at other places. It's not the output. The output could be great. But the experience of getting it, is the challenge. And they've come on and we've secured work, and then they've mentioned us to other people. So it's great that that's there. And what I find too is everyone says that, it's a great experience and here's the process and all that kind of stuff, but you have to prove it. You have to keep that going, and you have to be responsive. And, we've got one thing, you have to get back to every client in at least 3 hours on email. Just to say I'm on it. Just let you know that I've seen your email. And they appreciate that so much.
100%.
It's crazy.
100%.
So, we know a little bit now about you and where you are positioned within Two Tractors. We've had a good look at your YouTube channel too, with your 5,000 subs, which is pretty good for a Porsche. Is it Porsche Appreciation Society?
Or something like that.
What's the?
I do. You got to have a passion project, right?
You got a hobby or interest,
and actually, that was born out of wanting to better understand what my production team does. So that I thought, if I can shoot my own content, I can actually get a better sense of what it takes to produce content. And actually, what that's turned into is it's actually been really effective. If you think about, so we work with SsangYong, as you mentioned. I can go and film content for SsangYong if I need to. And in fact, I was just doing it last week. I can film and cut. I understand cars. I understand how cars look on a screen, how to make them look good on screen, what sort of lenses work on a car, what doesn't. Automotive photography and cinematography is actually a really specialised field. I'm a complete amateur at it. However, I've learned a lot from doing that passion project. So it's been a good thing.
Is Porsche the dream client?
Not really.
Oh, really?
No, I mean, surprisingly, it's a great question.
Because it seems to be all over your Instagram.
Look, that's my personal. That's my personal hobby.
Would it ruin the hobby for you if you had to work for them?
I don't know. And look at everyone switching off, going, "Oh God, he's Porsche." No, look, I think I would much rather work with, if I think about, say, working with SsangYong now, in terms of where that sits in the automotive space next to Porsche. They're very different brands, clearly, right? But what do I love about working with SsangYong? You're talking about a local client, you're talking about a challenger brand, which for us is absolutely spot on. We're really well geared to work with challenger brands. And you're talking about really localized content. And yes, there is the ability to take global content or Korean-based content and repurpose it for here. But to date, everything we've done with SsangYong has been delivered from go to woe by Two Tractors. So I'd much rather do that than get
like
some
an
content out of
international-
Germany or North America and just put, local postcodes on it.
Yeah,
And
for sure.
It'd be
Yeah.
awesome to compare the Sangyong Korean ads versus Aussie, like the Aussie translation of those.
Yeah,
So it'd be
yeah.
like, I'm not going to try and do the language or anything, but it'd be really good to see that. And then you'd be like an Aussie going, yeah, mate, that's right. You're like, it'd be...
There are some really interesting things we've seen that we've been supplied from Korea where you think, that doesn't quite translate. So you've got to be really careful with that. And look, thankfully to date, as I say, everything we've done has been fully produced here. With Sangyong somewhat relaunching themselves into the market 2 years ago, they signed on Merv Hughes. He was such a good ambassador for a brand that has some confusion in the marketplace about, okay, where are they from? Are they from Korea? Are they from China? Australians are so parochial particularly about dual cab utes. And here's this ambassador, this figure who he kind of transcends his history of cricket and has just become this sort of classic Aussie larrikin. And he's spot on for the target audience for the Musso and the Rexton in particular. So he was a really great get and really easy to build content around. So yeah, he's been terrific.
I was thinking that working with people like Merv Hughes, and I know she did some ads for Priceline with Chrissy Swan as well. Is it kind of uniquely fulfilling to work on those local clients and to kind of champion more local stories and local brands compared to when previous agencies have been working on international stuff?
Yeah, I think so. Look, I love both. And, an interesting example of that is, so we've worked with Voos multivitamins now since day one. So when we were launching 2 tractors, Tom Siebel had just launched Voos, and we were created an animated TVC for him. He had very little budget, but he was a real smart marketer and a real street fighter. And so, I remember at the time we did this ad and he got one placement during The Voice, which at the time was, it was a hot show. And that enabled him to get into, I think it was Coles. Tom, if you're listening, sorry if I'm getting this wrong. And then we went on this journey with Tom, and as he built that brand, we helped him build it and went from tiny budgets to bigger budgets and more interesting work and really intricate 3D creative and wild fun stuff. He built an amazing team around him, and then in I think 21 or 22 he sold to Procter & Gamble.
Wow.
So you have this tiny locally created brand that's founder led with a great team and then sells to P&G, and we had to then re-pitch. And we managed to win that pitch and retain it. And so now you're talking about a global brand.
You could spread your wings over multiple brands.
That's right. And so it's really interesting now because Sam Hilliard, who's the head of marketing for Voost and was on board with Tom but is now with P&G and based in Singapore, to look at the way the Procter & Gamble marketing machine applies its nous and all of that back end, it is a monstrous machine into the way they brief is actually a stark contrast, but really interesting. And you still then get down to the nuts and bolts of, okay, it's a different mode of working, but ultimately what do we have to do? We have to create a piece of content that eyeballs are going to want to stay on. So it's really interesting to do those, as you say, those kind of small local stories. And as it expands to become a global brand, how do you make sure you keep telling those stories in a way that's still engaging?
Yeah, that's incredible to champion a brand from get the get-go to being global.
To be acquired and then continue on with them. So it's great to be a part of the journey. You kind of get up the lasso on
That's
them.
amazing.
We felt some pressure in that pitch, I tell you, because we felt like we should know the brand better than any other agent.
So I'm probably thinking we'll either go in-house with this because we think we know what we're doing, or we're going to go with an outside source like yourselves. And obviously they saw the light and saw something unique about you.
Well, it was big agencies we were up against. I can't remember. There were 2 others, and it was during COVID, so we had to pitch. It was, on Zoom or Teams or something. And so we went to town on that pitch. I remember sitting in our boardroom with my laptop. I had a GoPro so that the picture was better. I lit it and everything. I'm like, we've got to win this pitch.
Dedication.
And we were testing how you could play video content across Zoom and it not get laggy.
Oh, man.
So we were
Yeah,
messing
yeah.
around with bit rates for like 2 days ahead of it just to make
goodness.
sure it would actually play.
That's amazing. How do you, just thinking especially with a project like that where you really have to put your best foot forward, how do you kind of generate ideas in that sense? How do you maintain your creativity and like...
Pre-chat GPT.
I'm just thinking, especially with like when you say you're doing things that involve 3D animation and they're so complex, like how do you even conceptualize that?
Trips down to the pub, I'm guessing.
Do you know what? Somewhat. I mean, we do Whiskey Wednesday in the
I
office,
love
which
that.
is that certainly helps.
Wednesday. Why aren't you there?
Yeah, I know. In fact, can we wrap this up? In fact, if there's whiskey here.
Yeah.
But honestly, I mean, that's really on our creative team, and you know, Tim, our creative director, who we've worked with for a long time, he's a really great developer of concepts, and then a couple of years ago, we hired a senior art director, Mike Wilson, and the two of them worked together really closely because Tim's a copywriter, actually, like me, historically. And, you know, the two of them are just such a great combination in terms of how do you come up with an idea? How do you make sure that it's punchy both in terms of narrative, but also in terms of the visual? And I think it's about, we've got a process we follow that we call creative flow, and it's a 5-step process. And there's a component of that which is about trying to make sure that particularly a client who's perhaps inexperienced or you know, someone who's having to spin a million plates feels a level of reassurance about, okay, there's some science behind this. I'm not just handing over a couple of $100,000 to some people with coloured pencils and hoping for the best. But the team is really good at using that process as a methodology to get to the key things that we need to communicate. And then it's just a matter of, it takes time. You've got to allow that creative sort of percolation, if you like, of idea generation, sitting on them, revisiting them. And then the other part that I think really adds to it is that because we've got the production team and the post team in the room, it means then that, because I'm a big believer that you have someone comes up with an idea and it's a great idea, but then it's through collaboration that people build on it and it becomes really great. And so being able to just holler across the room to Ben, who's going to direct it, or Paul, who's going to cut it and animate it and say, hey, we're thinking this, what do you think? And they might say, yeah, that's cool, but have you thought about this? And so you build things. And so then by the time we present to clients, we feel really confident that we've got a really great concept, but also we know we can deliver it. We've already done some of that homework ahead of time.
Yeah. Well, that was going to be my next question, is having all those creative teams, like especially the animated team, like I feel like a lot of kind of creative agencies don't have full service animators in-house.
Yep.
So having them in-house like that, does that really enhance the collaboration and the synergy and what you can actually achieve from the baseline?
Yeah, it does. And because the other thing is as well, so if I think about, I just mentioned Paul. Paul was our first employee, and you know, we felt this huge burden when we hired him. He's a family, and we're thinking, you know, he's joining us, his life depends on us. But Paul's a really great example of the type of people we hire, where there's no one has just a single discipline. So the advantage of that is that then if you're coming up with a creative solution to a problem, it doesn't have to be based on one type of output. So it doesn't have to be just animation, for example, or it doesn't have to be just live action. So you can do, okay, the idea might be that we're going to film and it's going to be based on talent, but there's an animation component to it as well. What does that animation component look like and how do we do it? And so in the case of Voost, for example, when we pitched, when we did the pitch I was just talking about before, we had a concept where we had people interacting with life-size tubes of Voost. And that was the loose idea that the creative team had, and we landed on that and we felt good about that. But once we then brought the production team in, that's where we then decided, okay, well, let's shoot this on green screen. Let's work with Robot Face, who are an incredible automated camera business, who basically have a repurposed automotive robot that they've turned into a tripod that you can create. And I'm butchering this explanation, but who you can create moving sequences that are entirely able to be prevised and entirely replicatable, so that you can run a movement where, for example, we had an actor running across green screen plinths, which we were then going to overlay with Voos tubes. We're able to do that live in real time on set because Ben, our director, had prevised it. And so having all of those things, having all of that knowledge internally, it's brilliant because you're not thinking, oh, how do we keep them occupied? How do we keep them motivated or excited by the work? And yeah, we're no different from anyone else. We've got our churn and burn, and we've got the stuff that, you know, keeps the doors open and doesn't always get everyone super pumped. But there's always something going on where you can holler to someone across the room and say, hey, we're thinking about this. What do you reckon? So there's always stuff.
It's so important to have that team collaboration. We find too that, you know, some of the guys want to work from home one day a week or whatever, and that's cool because sometimes you need that focus to be able to get something done as well. If you're doing production or editing or you need it. It's great. You can get it out. But then, having that ear listening helps a lot. Yeah. Like I was on the phone earlier and I had a client that we were talking about a situation, and then Flo, who's our project manager, he hears and goes, I've got an idea about that. And I'm like, perfect, great idea. Went back to him. He's like, yep, go for it. So you don't have all the answers. No. And that's what I think you've got to realise. And the team will get you there somehow.
100%. And that's where I think, it was difficult during COVID, right? Because you didn't have that shorthand of people in the room and that instant availability for an answer if you had a question or an idea if you wanted to see if it was plausible. Whereas when you're all in the space together, I know it's probably disruptive, and there's certain people in the business probably going, "Oh man, can I
those
just
with
get
loud voices, they're on the phone constantly.
Yeah,
it's annoying."
And we try and, I mean, we're no different from any other business in that we do not have enough meeting rooms. So, it's amazing how many really important calls happen out on the street out the front of the office. But if someone's really just needs to have their head down, plenty of people will have headphones on, or someone might say, I'm going to work from home today because I've got to just plough through this. That's fine.
Got an interesting question, because this happens, I think, no matter what agency, if it's creative, web, film, whatever. You come up with an amazing idea. You think it's going to tick every box. You pitch it, and they go, no.
Yeah.
How do you recover from that, or do you always have a plan B ready to go? Yeah,
I mean, it's rare that, in fact, I can't think of a time that we would just present the one. And to be honest, I mean, because the way we've built Creative Flow is that by the time you get to part 3, which is the ideas, usually we've gone through steps 1 and 2, which is discovery, and then the blueprint, which is basically a reverse brief, right? It's not rocket science, but there's real sign on at that point. So it's rare that we miss, but you do from time to time. And my thinking on that, quite honestly, is you just go again.
It just reminds me of Mad Men, the TV show. Have you seen? Yeah. And they pitch, and sometimes they win, sometimes it's a hit and miss kind of thing every so often. But you really have to put yourself out there and explain why. And it could be one person in the room out of the 4 executives that you're pitching to that goes, nah, it's not going to be right, and then that brings them down, and then it's gone. So it's
but a challenge. I think you have to, and that's where reading the room becomes important, because it's understanding the difference between objections and refusal. So, you might get an objection that you can clarify and respond to. And sometimes, I mean, so often we'll present concepts and, there'll be the question at some point, can we take that line you used in concept 3 and use it in concept 1? And
merging of ideas happens.
Happens all the time, right? And if they strategically make sense, then sure, 100%. But I'm certainly not, and I don't think anyone in the business would. I'm not going to try and convince a client who's simply not on board with any of the ideas that one of them's right. Because to me, that's when ego's involved, and it's you want the win. And to me, the win is the client feeling seen and heard, and the client's opinion actually meaning something because they live and breathe the brand every day, and they either feel like it's going to move the needle or they don't.
Sometimes all they need is a bit of them in what you're doing.
Yeah, sometimes,
and they're
yeah.
happy. I find that quite a lot.
Yeah.
We were talking about this a little bit earlier on about gut instinct.
Yeah.
And I find every day I'm using my gut instinct more than data on a sheet or someone telling me this is the perfect person for the job, or this is the way that we're going to go. Gut instinct plays a very big role, and I find most of the time it is the better answer.
Yep.
Do you find that as well with the way in which you do business too?
Yeah, and look, I don't know if that's, maybe that's an old school, maybe it's an age thing.
It's our generation.
Yeah, maybe.
Yeah.
And look, it's not to say I don't see the relevance and the importance or value in interpreting data and putting it to good use. I think there's absolutely an argument for that in almost every scenario. I've never been particularly driven by that, and I think, I don't know. I think you got to trust your instincts at the end of the day. Particularly, I mean, if you're talking about things like hiring and firing,
or clients, whether or not we should go for this particular pitch or not, because you spend weeks sometimes.
And
you're like, and sometimes I'm like, I know that's not something that's going to be of value for us in the next 6 to 12 months. So let's put the brakes on. Yeah,
look, and it's hard as an owner. You want every bit of business you can get, of course. And it's funny making the transition from being just a creative to being an owner, because you do think about things a little bit differently. You don't just think about what's the best creative project we could get. You think about what's a project that's going to keep the doors open. But I 100% go on gut. And actually where I think it's really valuable is having a partner who you trust. So, the thing for me is I've been on this journey since day one with Rick, my co-founder, and we didn't start the business because we wanted to build something and sell it. We weren't dissimilar from an actor who decides to become a producer so that they could have some control over the roles they take. For us, we just wanted to build a business we wanted to go to every day. It was, it's like, where can we be each day that we're going to love being there and have a great culture?
Yeah, it's so important.
100%.
Get up, jump out of bed, and go, I have no idea what's happening today, but I'm ready to go and hit it in the head.
And so I think if you talk about gut, if you're coming at problems or evaluating things or assessing things from a place of, I try and think about the business in a positive way, and by that I mean I don't want to make decisions from a defensive point of view. We're always trying to think about the business in a positive light. How do we make a decision on this based on where we want to be, not blocking something or defending against something, and having someone that I can trust and work so closely with. And we disagree on things and we debate things, but healthy. But our values are the same, and ultimately what we want for the business and ourselves and each other is the same. So that gut instinct for me is really important. But it's really good to be able to have the sounding board, the sense check of somebody else. So I feel pretty lucky to have that.
One last thing that's kind of related to that is obviously you've got a team. You're talking about Ben and Rick and some of the other boys and girls there. But what do you find as part of the Two Tractors culture works really well to maintain your people, to keep them happy, motivated? Like you got Whiskey Wednesday, and I think there was something about beers on Friday that Rick was talking about. Like it's not alcohol based, but
yes, it's booze, nothing else.
Just supply the liquor. But for me, I find as a business owner too, you're wanting to make sure that your team are challenged. They're on things they want to be on. They're learning. But at the same time, they want to have their free breakfast, or they want to grab a trip down to the hot springs, or what's Two Tractors do for your team?
Yeah, I mean, look, we do things like we put on Friday lunch every week for the team that we pay for. We do, drinks on Wednesday and stuff like that. But to be honest, I think from a career perspective, those things just become wallpaper or hygiene, right? At the end of the day, they're not the things that are going to keep people in the business. So I'd like to think that we do our best to try and create pathways for people, which in a smaller business is not always easy. But if we can see that someone's got a skill set or an interest and there's an opportunity that can suit them and the business, we'll do whatever we can to actually make that work. And we've got, if I think about Ben, for example, he joined our organisation as an animator and editor who happened to be a really good cinematographer as well, but he really wanted to get into directing. And so, gradually over time, he's moved into that role where he's sort of our key go-to director. Dom, who we hired, she joined us, I guess, coming up to 2 years ago, perhaps. She's great, account manager, but has the right skill set, but also the right attitude and just a great person to deal with. Where you say, okay, there's a real great opportunity where if we give her support her with training and learning opportunities and client contact, she can become someone in the business. So she's account director now, already having only joined us a couple of years ago, because she's great. And then I think the other thing, just quickly, is gratitude. I always we say it to the team. We'll do our Christmas party, and at some point, Rick and I'll get up and make a speech at the back end of the night, and we always kind of say in it that we hope through the year we've made it really apparent how grateful we are for the work everyone does, because we know someone's doing stuff on a Saturday, and it's those, because if you come in with a bit of gratitude for those sorts of things, it means you give them the flexibility. You say, don't come in Monday, or if you finished late last night because the shooting went over time, don't rush in the morning, or work from home tomorrow if you need to. It's those things. I think flexibility and understanding that life happens is actually a really important thing as well.
Especially as people have kids, or
100%.
Someone's wife's coming in from overseas or something, or you've got family coming. Like, it's having that time where they can go, I've got, thanks to Andy, I've got the day off. I can just spend it going out, having a bit of a lunch with my friends or whatever. It's huge.
And I think, just quickly, the things like a Friday lunch or whatever, they're good to-dos, but I think you just got to be good people in general. And if you hire good people, then you just want to know how they're going, and then you just connect with them. And I certainly hope the team, I'm sure sometimes they probably just think of us as the blokes who own the joint, but I hope the team feels that gratitude from us, and that the culture's there.
Yeah.
Okay.
Oh, awesome.
Speed round.
Right.
This is the
chicken
exciting
sizzle,
bit. Okay. I feel like this one's easy. Creative or code?
Creative.
I'm going to say, because you guys don't code. No, it's not going to be code. Favorite design tool?
Oh.
Or I guess just creative tool in general.
For me, it's Photoshop.
Classic. Favorite website?
Oh boy, car sales.
That's a good one.
I love Monocle. What else? Trying to make myself sound smart. Nah, not really. I'm obsessed, but not that obsessed. Yeah.
How many hours per week do you work?
I don't know. I do a usual days, sort of 8:30 till 6ish, 5:30, whatever. But then you're online at night and stuff.
Coffee or tea?
Coffee.
What's the first app you open every day?
Instagram.
I think Instagram is so far by far the most popular first app of the day. So. Yeah.
Is it because of posts, like people messaging you, or is it you just like to?
A bit of both. Because the one thing I've found with Instagram is it's kind of become, notwithstanding all of the issues and problems with it, it's become a kind of a great global communicator for me. I've just got people I'm in touch with I guess I'd call them friends, who I've never met, who are in the US or in Europe. And so typically I'm having a message conversation with somebody somewhere. So yeah.
And you just reach out and say, love the artwork you're doing or whatever.
Yeah, that's it. Or they reach out to me and then, you sort of become contacts, let's say. Yeah. And then, I like to scroll through and look at photos of cars.
Speed
Lovely.
I'll shut my mouth, yep.
Dark mode or light mode?
Light.
Mac or PC?
Mac. Oh, come on.
I don't think we've had a single person say PC, by the way.
I've been Mac. I was on a Mac Classic, like the box.
Oh, nice. Cats or dogs?
Dogs.
Work from home or work from office?
Office.
Favorite font?
Here's one.
That's a good one for you.
Man. Accidents Grotesque.
Ooh, nice. Design or spec?
Design.
What's your favorite snack while working?
Tiny teddies.
That's a good answer. Pineapple on pizza?
Used to, but not so much these days.
Ooh. Summer or winter?
Oh, I'm totally on the fence on that one. Yeah,
Autumn,
I love them
spring.
both. Yeah, I love because come on,
Curling up on the couch.
No, wait, do you know what? Autumn? It's got to be autumn. Yeah, autumn's because spring is that's the season that overpromises and underdelivers.
Especially in Melbourne.
Yeah. Autumn's like late summer, but with cold nights.
Nice. City or country?
Both.
And the final question, would you rather time travel into the past or into the future?
Past.
Where would you go in the past?
1955. No,
Back to the Future reference.
Yeah, thanks.
I was going to mention
spotted.
that before, by the way, too, because do you know when we were talking about those cameras that you can do sequences on?
Yeah.
Back to the Future 2, where they had the dining table and Marty's
yeah.
that was using one of those old school mechanical cameras to make that
that's
together,
right.
because he was 3 of the people in that.
Yeah, he
scene.
was. He was Marlene, and he was himself,
And his dad.
and then the son. Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
And the son, yeah, that's right. But amazing. And there was someone else that was doing it twice. Oh, and the actual dad out of the first one.
Crispin Glover.
Yeah. Do you know how they painted him upside down,
Yeah.
so you couldn't recognise that it wasn't him as the actor?
Yep.
And he tried to get royalties out of that. Even though
Yeah,
it
well, he
was
sued them.
Yeah.
He actually sued them for using his likeness, and I believe that was settled. I think
Out of court or whatever.
Yeah, something like that.
I've seen the Back to the Future behind the
Yeah,
scenes as well.
So big fan.
Okay.
Yeah.
Past. I don't think I said where.
Yeah, where would you go?
I'd be interested to see my parents actually.
Oh, nice.
When they were growing
It is
up?
a bit of a back to
Yeah,
the
like
future
come on.
answer.
Just make sure you're not wearing your CKs.
Yeah, no, exactly. No, that's right. I've seen purple underwear before.
You seen Back to the Future?
No.
Oh. there
Well,
you go. You got
yes,
some
but
homework
not
this
for a
weekend.
while. Oh,
Yeah,
my
yeah.
movie list is too long. We can't get
All
into
these
this.
like 1980s, 1990s movies that she
Yeah.
has to watch. Because you're from 2000. What are you? 2020? When were you born? 19.
1998.
Oh, 98.
Yeah.
Have you met 2,000 people yet? It's weird. Like 20-year-olds.
Yeah, I would have.
My brother was born in 2000 and he's 24. How does that
Weird.
work?
Good Lord.
Yeah.
When I was graduating from high school, he was born. That's weird.
Yeah.
I was.
Hey.
I was already working.
What can I say?
Yeah, that's been great.
Amazing.
so
Thank you
much.
for having me.
Thanks for tuning in to the Creative and Code podcast.
That's all, folks.
We hope you enjoyed this episode and found it as inspiring and entertaining as we did. Remember, there are plenty more episodes to explore, so make sure you keep listening for more creative insights and coding tips. A big shout out to our amazing sponsors and the team at ID Digital Agency for making this podcast possible. Got a story to share or want to be a guest on our show? We'd love to hear from you. Send us a 2-minute or less audio clip to creativeandcode@iddigital.com.au. Suggestions, ideas, or just want to say hi, we're all ears. Thanks again for listening. Until next time, stay creative and keep coding.